Hello and welcome to Animals in Aztec Culture. This is just going to be a presentation about kind of how animals played a role in Aztec society, how they used them for their benefit, and how they perceived them in a mythological way. I'm interested in this project because my dad comes from southern Mexico, kind of the area where the Aztecs once had a lot of power and had a basically an entire empire down there. And I just think they have a lot of really cool beliefs about animals. It seems like most of their deities revolve around some sort of creature, whether it be real or a new hybrid one. So there's a lot to talk about regarding it. Also, just kind of a fun little story about my family and how this project relates to it. About a year and a half ago, or I guess, yeah, about a year and a half ago for Christmas time, um, my parents decided to get my brother a dog. And so I was home for break and I got to see it happen. He was super excited, obviously. And then it became time to name him. And we were going through all sorts of options. And then I kind of had the suggestion of just like let's look at the names of Aztec gods because that'd be cool, you know. And we were looking, and my brother actually randomly picked Zolotl, or shortened to Zolo. Um, and it was just kind of funny because he just liked that it was like the god of death and the god of lightning, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But for those of you who know about it or have seen maybe the movie Coco, you know that Zolos or Zolotos are actually very significant in Aztec culture and Mexican culture as uh, dogs who have this connection to the underworld and are mythical creatures. So without knowing, my brother named my dog basically the best Aztec name he could name it. So that was just kind of funny, and that was just some information about why I'm interested in this project. So let's get into it. So when it comes to domestication, there actually was not a lot of it going on in the Aztec culture. Um, People point to different reasons, but the kind of most prevalent argument is that it just didn't make sense. The Aztecs had a primarily vegetarian-based diet, and so there wasn't a lot of need for big sources of meat. That being said, some animals were definitely domesticated, turkeys being one of them. Turkeys were used both for their meat and for their eggs. So they were often eaten for special occasions. They definitely were not eaten at every meal or anything like that. Um, and then dogs were also domesticated, and while they were used as companions, they were also used as meat. Um, and both turkeys and dogs were used in sacrificial settings as well. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But the Aztecs believed very much in sacrifice. And thought that killing these animals could give them certain powers or help them on their way. Um, and then the last thing that the Aztecs were known to domesticate is honeybees. Um, Now these bees were actually non-stinging bees. They're a type of American bee that didn't have stingers, and they found a way to domesticate them, and it gave them a frequent source of honey, which obviously is great. As we know, sweet products are very have been very valuable throughout history. The sugar industry was one of the most profitable and kind of craziest economies that kind of spread when Europeans started coming to the Americas. So we know that that's a very valuable resource, and the Aztecs found a way to domesticate bees and basically have access to sweet products all the time. So that was really cool. So as I said before, the Aztecs did not eat a ton of meat. That being said, they actually also hunted beyond eating the domesticated animals they had in their society. Um, some of the animals that were most commonly hunted were the white-tailed deer, boar, and ducks and birds who would uh, they would often hunt the ones that were coming through Mexico during migration. Lots of different species are known to do that. and so they would know when the migration patterns were coming, and then that season would often result in a bigger source of meat coming from birds and stuff like that. Um, so yeah, these hunts were not super common, but they, like I said, they may have been done for religious purposes, or it just may have been a great source of protein that they were able to get. But these weren't sought out often. Hunting, especially in the kind of terrain that the Aztecs lived in, was just um, very strenuous and not the most ideal at many times. So it just made more sense to focus on growing crops instead. Um, However, the empire grew and grew and grew, and at its peak, there was enough Aztec communities near the shores in Mexico that they actually were able to kind of create a fish market supply where the Aztec communities on the coast would fish and be able to get fish back to the main empire, the main city. And so fish ended up becoming a more significant part of their diet over time, but was still not used as much as their vegetarian options. Clothing made from animals was not super common in Aztec culture. Most people weren't wearing them. Garments in that time period, in that society, were fairly simple and not very extravagant. However, in these images you can see it did happen. Um, Often garments made from animals were preserved for those in the highest places of power, such as leaders like priests in the religion, or great warriors going off to battle. As you can see in both of the upper images, people in those pictures have jaguar hide on them, and the jaguar was considered the highest, most divine animal in the entire animal kingdom. It was considered the most powerful, the strongest, and so they worshipped this one above any other one. And so when they would go off to fight, if they would usually have the jaguar hide be preserved for the fiercest warrior, as they thought it would bring them goodwill in battle. Um, Now, while wearing garments was not super common, tattoos were. The Aztec people believed that, like we do, that tattooing something on your body has significant meaning, and they believed that it could even give them the power of what they put on their body. And because animals were so important to this culture, oftentimes what they got were animals that they felt could represent their goals or who they wanted to be, and so many people got tattoos in that period. Yeah. So as I was saying, the jaguar is was considered to be the most powerful deity in their faith, and so the god connected to the jaguar was named uh, Tezcatlipoca. And you can see him. He is going to be in the upper section of my slide, in the middle with the jaguar print. Um, and he was considered to be the creator of what was the first of four worlds that the Aztecs believed had been created and destroyed before the current world that they were living in existed. And so he was kind of considered to be the original maker of this land. Beyond that, he was attributed to a bunch of different, yeah, aspects of their world. He's contributed to the night sky. He was contributed to the night winds. He was contributed to hurricanes, to the earth, to war, to beauty, to sorcery. So he was just kind of one of the all-around most important and most powerful deities in their faith. Um, the god next to him on the upper right hand side, his name was Quetzalcoatl, and he is a feathered serpent. So he is not a real animal, but kind of a hybrid animal of existing ones. And this feathered serpent has been used by cultures around the world, which is really cool. But in specifically in Mesoamerican faiths and communities, for kind of in pre-Columbian times for about 500 to 2,000 years, there's evidence of many of them having this feathered serpent who changed roles based on which community was was worshiping him. But it's interesting to see that this character has kind of presided throughout, even if the meaning and exact purpose what has been changed. I think there's something to be said about uh, the power of a serpent, but by giving it the feathers, you kind of, I don't know, there it just ties it into uh, something new, and I think that's interesting to point out. Um, but Quetzalcoatl um, was the god of wind. He was the god of air. He was the god of learning. He was the god of dawn and priesthood. And so he was kind of seen as a positive figure. There's some gods in the Aztec faith that are very negative and kind of considered evil based. He was considered one of the good ones, um, and widely celebrated, one of the most popular by far. Um, but he actually had a twin brother who you can see in the lower screen, kind of next to my text, and his name was Xolotl, which I mentioned at the very beginning of my speech. Um, and so, as you all know, by now he is attributed to dogs and was the deity for all dogs. But beyond that, he was attributed to lightning, he was attributed to fire and death. And he was kind of thought to be one of the fiercest and most powerful gods. Um, but beyond that, a little fun thing that I thought uh, was cool about Zoloto was, like the way the dogs are meant to guide people into the underworld, like those of you who've seen Coco would know. Um, the god Zoloto was the protector of the sun every night when the Aztecs believed the sun went to go to the underworld, and that's why it got dark. And so Zoloto was thought to be the sun's guide as he made his way through. And so I thought that was kind of a cool connection. And so the god next to Zoloto on my slide, in kind of the center part of the lower half, her name was Mayuel. And she's really cool, I think, because she's connected both to a plant and an animal. So her animal is the rabbit. Like a lot of cultures, the rabbit was a symbol of fertility and life, which pretty common in many places. But what's cool about her is, as you can see in this image, she kind of has looks like this like wild, almost octopus arms coming out behind her in this image. But it's actually an agave plant, and she was attributed to that because the Aztecs used that for creating alcohol. Tequila comes from agave plants, and also sweetener. So as I mentioned, the Aztecs use honey as sweetener, but they can domesticate unlimited amounts of bees, and the agave plant provided them with a great source of a natural sweetener as well. So the agave plant was very important to the culture, and as such, Maya well was considered to be kind of, along with her connection to the rabbit, uh, just a symbol of life, and was regarded as a mother-like figure for the people. She's often drawn with several breasts to feed all of her children, which is thought to be all the people of the land.